Imagine planning a massive construction project on someone's property, drawing up contracts, negotiating terms, getting everything ready to go, and then forgetting to tell the actual property owner until the day before you're about to announce it publicly. That's essentially what just happened to British Columbia. The federal government and Alberta have been cooking up an energy deal that involves building a pipeline through BC, potentially exempting it from environmental protections, and possibly dumping taxpayer money into the project, and somehow, BC wasn't invited to the conversation. David Eby found out about this through media reports like the rest of us, and he is not having it. On Monday, he told Prime Minister Mark Carney that excluding BC from these talks was unacceptable, which in diplomatic speak means, "Are you kidding me right now?" Welcome back to Canadian Insights, where cooperative federalism apparently means everyone cooperates except the province where the actual project is happening. Let's break down this political disaster. So here's what went down. David Eby had a phone call with Mark Carney on Monday morning, and based on Eby's comments to reporters afterward, it was the kind of conversation where one person is trying very hard to remain professional while the other person explains why they're absolutely furious. The topic? An upcoming memorandum of understanding between Alberta and Ottawa that could reshape energy infrastructure on the West Coast. You know, the coast that's in British Columbia. The province that apparently wasn't consulted. Eby came out of that conversation and told reporters that Carney outlined the agreement with Alberta isn't finalized yet. Translation: Don't worry David, we haven't completely screwed you over yet, there's still time to include your input. But here's the thing, the fact that they're this close to finalizing a deal about BC infrastructure without BC being involved from the start is exactly the problem. It's like planning someone's surprise birthday party, except it's not their birthday, they don't like surprises, and you're using their credit card to pay for it. According to a federal government source who spoke to CTV News, Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith are planning to announce this deal on Thursday in Calgary. Thursday. As in, 3 days away when this video drops. The MOU could include changes to the industrial carbon price and support for a new pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast. But wait, there's more. This pipeline would require a carve-out of the federal tanker ban. You know, that environmental protection that exists because oil spills on the coast are catastrophically bad. And how might they accomplish this carve-out? Through Bill C-5, the One Canadian Economy Act that established the new Major Projects Office. Because nothing says one Canadian economy like making deals that exclude entire provinces from the conversation. Let's pause here and appreciate the absolute chaos of learning about major infrastructure plans through media leaks. Last week, Eby said he was caught off guard by the reported terms of this deal. He learned about it the same way you learned about your ex's new relationship, through social media and news articles. That's not governance, that's gossip. The premier of the province where this pipeline would be built shouldn't be finding out about it through CBC headlines. That's not how serious infrastructure decisions are supposed to work. Unless you're actively trying to alienate provincial partners, in which case, mission accomplished. Now here's where Eby really let them have it. He told Carney it was unacceptable to have Saskatchewan and Alberta speaking about matters in British Columbia without British Columbia at the table. And he's absolutely right. This isn't Alberta deciding what to do with Alberta's resources. This is Alberta and Saskatchewan discussing what happens in British Columbia without inviting BC to participate. It's the political equivalent of your neighbors having a meeting about what color to paint your house and then being surprised when you're upset about it. But Eby didn't stop there. He dropped what might be the most cutting line of this entire saga. This is not something that would happen to Quebec. This is not something that would happen to other provinces in the Federation. Ooh, he went there. He played the Quebec card, and you know what? He's not wrong. Can you imagine Ottawa and Alberta sitting down to plan infrastructure through Quebec without inviting Quebec to the table? The province would shut down Parliament before lunch. There would be angry press conferences in both official languages. The separatist movement would have a field day. But BC? Apparently BC gets the "we'll tell you later" treatment. This gets to something deeper about Canadian federalism that people don't talk about enough. There's this weird hierarchy where certain provinces get treated like partners and others get treated like stakeholders who'll be informed eventually. Quebec has political power and knows how to wield it. Ontario's too big to ignore. But Western provinces like BC? They get caught in this strange zone where they're economically important but politically can be taken for granted. And Eby's basically saying not anymore, we're done with that. Let's talk about what Eby actually wants, because it's not like he's just complaining without offering solutions. He told Carney he wants any potential energy deal to include a cap, or potentially a ban, on the use of taxpayers' dollars to build a pipeline. That's a pretty reasonable position. If private companies want to build pipelines with private money, that's one thing. But if we're talking about using public funds to subsidize oil and gas infrastructure, BC wants a say in whether that happens. Especially when that infrastructure runs through their province and potentially puts their coastline at risk. And here's the billion-dollar question that nobody seems to be asking. Why is this deal being rushed? Why announce it Thursday in Calgary when BC's Premier is publicly saying they weren't properly consulted? What's the urgency? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like Ottawa and Alberta were hoping to present BC with a done deal and assumed they'd just accept it. That's not negotiation, that's railroad politics. And Eby's making it very clear that approach isn't going to fly. There's also the Indigenous rights dimension that nobody's properly addressing. Any pipeline to the West Coast goes through Indigenous territories. Those communities have constitutionally protected rights to be consulted on projects affecting their lands. If the provincial government wasn't consulted, what are the chances that affected First Nations were meaningfully included in these discussions? Probably about the same as BC's chances of being invited, somewhere between slim and none. And that's a recipe for legal challenges, project delays, and the exact kind of gridlock that everyone claims they want to avoid. Eby said he expressed to Carney that he expects BC to be at the table going forward, and he hopes his feedback is incorporated into any final agreement. That's diplomatic language for, you better rewrite this thing or we're going to have serious problems. Because BC has tools at their disposal too. Environmental assessments. Provincial permits. Legal challenges. Public opposition. If Eby decides to dig in his heels, this pipeline becomes exponentially more complicated, and Ottawa knows it. So here's where we are. Thursday's announcement is supposedly still happening, but now everyone knows that BC's Premier thinks the process has been unacceptable. Carney's in a tough spot. Does he delay the announcement to properly consult BC, which makes him look indecisive? Or does he go ahead with it and risk a full-blown federal-provincial conflict? Either way, this is what happens when you try to do infrastructure politics through backroom deals instead of proper consultation. You end up with angry premiers, media scrutiny, and a process that looks less like nation-building and more like amateur hour. What's your take? Should BC have been consulted from day one, or is Eby overreacting? And is it fair for him to point out that Quebec wouldn't be treated this way? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation matters. If you found this breakdown valuable, smash that like button. Subscribe to Canadian Insights for multiple daily updates on Canadian politics, because trust me, with the way things are going, there's always more chaos coming. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one where we'll probably be discussing whatever federal-provincial disaster unfolds next.